surge in COVID cases.
We are hopeful that it's a rapid rise and a rapid decline in terms of number of cases. But these next few weeks are going to be something that we've not seen before in Minnesota.
Minnesota Health Director Jan Malcolm, as the state also earmarks millions in federal funding to fortify hospital staffing. Last week, Minnesota's Mayo Clinic fired 700 employees for refusing the COVID shot. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Tunay na kaibigan at handa para sa inyo. Ang bangko ng kinabukasan, laging maaasahan. And Pacific, where others dug branches, we place roots.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglonia from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. Zero down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Even though it's the last day of the week, I'm sticking with it. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Jose and I are going to have a couple days off. We regret it, but there's not much we can do about it. But we'll be back on Monday. Even though the government of Guam won't, we will be here. Okay, so let's start off today's show with Zemi Ikotny. Now, the Daily News has got a really, really exciting editorial today. It's just one of those, when you're reading it, you're saying, yeah, right on, Daily News. Sock it to them. Let them have it. Be the truth teller here. Put these people where they in their place. Here's the title, Our View. We hope to see Guam Public Library System's plans become a reality. Yeah, wow. I just couldn't control myself as I was reading it.
Bob, shh.
Oh, yeah. Did I ever tell you the blonde
Soft
joke,
before.
Jose?
I don't think I've heard it.
Yeah, it's probably politically extremely incorrect, but you know the blonde jokes, right? Well, the blonde walks up to the counter, and she says, I like a Big Mac and fries and a chocolate malt. And the lady behind the counter says, ma'am, this is the library. And the blonde says, oh, sorry, I'd like a Big Mac, fries, and the chocolate. Sorry out there, all you blondies. I didn't make up the genre of the jokes, but there it goes. So back to the library here. The Guam Public Library is hoping to revitalize itself in the coming months to become a much more valuable resource to the island. Let's see here. A library provides invaluable resources and services, especially to residents who can't afford to buy books or need to use computers or access the internet. When you get your library card, it gives you free computer access. The library also provides free Wi-Fi, even if you don't have a card. And that's probably going to be the demise of libraries as we know them. You know, we have a law library, and we were able to start our own law library back in the late 70s when a private law school in the mainland closed up, and they sold us their whole library collection for $35,000, which at the time seemed like a bargain. So the library bought all that stuff, and then a lot of loose leaf publications and things like that, but an awful lot of it now is obsolete because of the internet. And the same thing, I'm afraid, is also true of the library. But the folks at the library say in about 6 months, our library will be transformed into 21st century library. And that's the Kent Public Library System Director. Now, the person in charge of the library used to be the territorial librarian. But that name doesn't have a whole lot of pizzazz, right? So I think it was during the time the administration of a guy who probably had never even been in a library before. It was changed to director instead of librarian. I can't remember the guy's name, but he didn't have the credentials to be a librarian. He needed a job, though, so it was okay. So the librarian, the director said that she wants to upgrade the library system's website, which he said looks like it's 100 years old, to make digital resources more accessible to public, such as ebooks. We should also be able to get that ebook posted on our website so the patrons can have it in 5 minutes, not only the ebook, but also the audiobook. So I guess the subtitle here is that the library goes to the net, which is as it should be, actually, of course. I got to get on Facebook here. I just walked in and started the show and didn't have a chance to set up my Facebook account or page. And, of course, it's going to be a little bit slow today. Okay, then we go from there to the Post. And the Post says, practice simple ways to stem rapid rise in Wuhan virus cases. You know what this is going to be about. You know, wash your hands, wear your mask, social distance. So I've kind of hypothesized this imaginary conversation at the editorial boardrooms of both newspapers. So we'll have A and B. A says to B, you know, we gotta crank out an editorial. We got about a half an hour to the deadline. I don't have the foggiest idea what to write about. What do you think, B? B says, yeah, write about COVID-19 and safety precautions. You can do that off the tip of your fingers. You know it all so well. It'll fill up the space, and it'll at least be an editorial. Yeah, I guess I'll do that. That's kind of the way it looks here. Wearing and after the first subtitle, which says simple but can be effective, we get this. Wearing a face mask to keep variants of the virus that cause Wuhan virus from entering our bodies by breathing or inhaling the particles is one of the most simple ways to keep us from getting Wuhan virus, and it's a solution that does not entail putting chemicals into our bloodstream. So wearing a mask, that's one of the simplest ways, and it doesn't involve putting chemicals in it, and it's a good way to do it.
They obviously don't subscribe to their competitors' publication.
Exactly, and that's and that's exactly where I'm going to go, to the Daily News. And the Daily News runs a story titled "Berg, Cloth Masks Ineffective. Less reason to fear surge." In the absence of a tight-fitting N95 mask, residents should opt for surgical masks over cloth masks during the ongoing Wuhan virus surge, advised Dr. Nathaniel Berg, chairman of the Governor's Physician Advisory Council. Now, when we first got into the whole Wuhan virus thing, we were told, don't buy N95 masks. Remember that? Don't even think about buying an N95 mask. We need these for the medical professionals. So nobody bought the N95 mask. Now Berg comes out and says, these cloth masks that everybody wears, I wear them too, because they're not as uncomfortable as a surgical mask. I can fold them up and put them in my pocket, where they're sure to attract all kinds of germs and God knows what else. And I just stick one in my pocket, and it's there, and if I need it, I got it. I think it'll be a while before I put a surgical mask on over my cloth mask. But the cloth mask is kind of like a not-so-sophisticated ID card. If I'm going to go out for a walk and I want to stop and pay less and buy a bunch of bananas, or a Pacific Island Times because it's the first of the month, I'll just grab my pocket, grab that mask, it's always there, and go in to pay less. I don't have any faith in all that the mask keeps me from getting sick or keeps anybody else from getting sick. But it's like when you're 17 years old or when you're 20 years old and you want to go into the bar, you got to have some kind of an ID card, right? It's the same thing. And then Berg goes on to say, Berg made a speech at the Rotary Club, and surprise, surprise, Melvin Wonpat didn't come back with a rebuttal. Berg says, I think, you better put a mask on over the speaker on your phone there if you're listening on your iPhone.
I'm going to mute you.
Yeah. Berg said, I think that the filtration of a cloth mask is unlikely to provide significant benefit. So when I see patients are wearing cloth masks, I tell them, if you're going to do that to protect yourself, you'd be better off wearing surgical masks. And then, while residents have been advised to mask up and keep their distance during the last 2 weeks, Governor Luann Guerrero hasn't tightened restrictions as she has in the past. I think she's finally got the message. I think she's the saying goes, she's either gun shy or got cold feet. So if you see her stumbling around in a great big pair of boots, you know the governor got cold feet. The editorial goes on to say there was no burning desire in the LG administration to close schools without evidence of the virus spread there, Berg said. Boy, and this is something. We just don't do the off with your heads routine without any evidence anymore. And then Berg also said there's also less reason to fear the current surge. While the public may be alarmed by the record-setting daily case counts in recent weeks and climbing CAR score, the metrics that mattered were hospital bed space and the availability of emergency staff. Just 17 people were hospitalized at Guam Memorial and GRMC as of Thursday with Wuhan virus, despite a record 516 new cases reported. Of the 17, 3 were admitted for other reasons but tested positive upon admission. We know how that one goes, right? Yeah. So I've seen this all over the internet, that the Omicron virus may be much more contagious and easily spread about, but much less dangerous. And the one rationale for that is that that the virus, even like human beings, has a sense of self-survival. And if the virus kills all of its hosts too fast, then the virus won't survive. So the virus is kind of learned and morphed into a less deadly virus that's more contagious. Let's hope that's the way it works. I understand that's what happened to the Spanish flu, that the Spanish flu is now rather common in humans, but it's not at all anywhere near deadly or something to really be afraid of. So, so Post, you're not going to get a blue star today. Maybe I'll give Nate Berg a blue star for setting you straight. But you can't just keep saying this same old stuff. Wear your mask, wash your hands, safe distances, etc. We're tired of it. You got to do more than that in your editorial pages.
You know what's interesting also, getting back to the Rotary Club, I don't know if you listened to it yesterday. It was hard to follow live because the connection was off, but I watched the replay. And I think one of the first questions was how they calculate the CAR score. And Dr. Berg said, "Oh, we really don't use it anyways for anything." And I was like, "What?" It's like it's ineffective and non-consequential. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, but we do it all the time. And when it's really high, we want you to worry about it, please. Yeah, and it's really high right now, right? Okay, I got so much for the Jemmy Cotney portion of the show. We'll go now into the next regularly scheduled portion of the show. This is called Our Carl's Comments, and then we'll get into the card. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Hey, Bob. I just have to mention something funny. When I was talking to Jose, when I was telling him I wanted to talk about the virus, and he actually typed into his computer "our virus."
Yes, I did.
Well, okay, you've had your input. They don't call you the most dangerous man in the room for no reason at all, our Carl.
I guess. Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of quick points. One of them, I heard something interesting on the radio today. Someone was being interviewed. Oh, it's Dr. Marty McCary from Johns Hopkins, who is one of the doctors that I place a high degree of trust in, his opinion. And he mentioned that these how this virus is spread is not through droplets; it's aerosolized, and that the tiny microscopic bits of matter that spread the virus are about 5 microns across. The openings in cloth masks range from 10 to 20 microns. Does anyone see the problem with this math?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when this first started out, a friend of mine gave me 3 N95 masks. And the problem with those is that when I wore them, I'd be walking around like at the store or whatever. I had to continually, like every few feet, lift up the bottom of the mask because I couldn't breathe. It was just, it was really bad.
Well, Carl, now wait a minute, just a second here. Let's look at the science. If no air can get in through that mask, then those little submicroscopic particles aren't going to get in either. So the mask was very effective, and you ruined it by breathing.
Exactly, but the little problem is if I didn't lift up the bottom of the mask, I might collapse and be found purple somewhere in the grocery aisle.
Not to worry, because you would have been tested, and had you tested positive for the virus, you would have been just one more Wuhan virus death, our Carl.
Very true. My little contribution.
Uh-huh.
And just one other thing. One thing that's always frustrated me is this phrase about people hospitalized, COVID-related or with COVID. The problem is that pretty much, I think most, if not all hospitals, they, as a matter of course, test people who enter the hospital to see if they've got COVID or, this virus, because they don't want them to spread the virus through the hospital. So I've never seen anyone, and you may have seen otherwise, but I've never seen a single news report where the reporter clarified on how many of the people in the hospital with COVID or with this virus were there because of the virus. In other words, they had breathing problems, they had symptoms that brought them to the hospital, or did they have a broken arm or leg or some other injury or whatever. They were in the hospital and they got tested and they found they just happened to coincidentally have the virus. And I think all this is getting lumped together, and it's making it look like there's this huge onrush of people with this virus, which is extremely contagious, and it just makes it look like there's hordes and hordes, just mobs of people going to the hospital because of the virus, when in fact a lot of people are getting it, but it's not causing a lot of people to go to the hospital.
Well, if
so I just think journalistic curiosity has died and has been buried, as far as I'm concerned.
everyone who reports on the so-called virus should be forced to read Dr. Friedman's letter to the editor of a few days ago, where he talked about metabolic syndrome. And if we want to put something in the paper, we should report how many people are in the hospital with metabolic syndrome. And then the next paragraph would be, and of those people, of those 40 people in the hospital because of metabolic syndrome, 3 of them also have the Wuhan virus. And it'll get, the metabolic syndrome will get them before the Wuhan virus gets them.
Exactly. Yeah, and I just think there just seems to be little intellectual curiosity, and investigative reporting is becoming a dying art. I think the closest we've got on Guam is probably Troy Torres.
He is indeed. Yeah,
he is Guam's own muckraker. So kudos to Troy. And if I've missed out, and there are genuinely investigative reporters out there, sorry, but I just haven't seen it. I just don't see it that much.
I mentioned the other day, a fact a couple of times in the recent past, that apparently one of the criteria to be a reporter is no curiosity whatsoever. When all of the media outlets ran the so-called Attorney General suit story, without saying, how do you go about suing a contract?
Yeah, exactly.
And the same thing with the governor's, well, the 30 days passed and the legislature didn't do anything, so now I'm going to start implementing that law. No one thought to think, how do you pass a law without it going to the floor and having people vote for it? No.
Well, part of the job description for a journalist these days is must love cats.
Is what?
Must love cats.
Must love cats.
Because curiosity will kill the cat. Sorry.
They'll be kind to Cats Club.
There you go.
I think you got something there.
But you know what? Again, yesterday at the Rotary Club lunch, Dr. Berg was asked that question about the differentiation between COVID cases or COVID deaths direct versus those who go to the hospital and test positive for COVID but die of something otherwise. He said some sort of, he didn't really say a direct answer, but said we're considering it, or we've talked about differentiating those facts because we need to have these real numbers. But again, it was from the Rotary Club and not a group of journalists asking these questions.
Yeah. The Rotary Club members have a more developed sense of curiosity than the reporters do. I think I can tell you that from my own experience.
They cut through the muck.
Yeah.
Yeah, and until these figures are audited, I just don't trust the figures at all. I haven't seen any serious audits being done. I think the governor or one of her administration could stand up in the front before reporters and announce, solemnly that the moon is made of green cheese, and you'd see reporters out in the audience scribbling furiously, moon, made of green cheese.
Yeah. I know exactly what I've been saying myself, Carl. You're absolutely right on that.
Okay, Bob. Well, that's my 2 bits so far today.
Okay, well, we've loaded up the show pretty good at the beginning. Let's take a short break here.
It's the biggest singing competition and reality show on Guam. The Holiday Show with Jay Martin proudly presents the Guamanian Star. Watch how the talented Guamanian artists conquer the shining star stage and elevate the local Guam cultural artistry to the global entertainment quality. Interested parties can email theguamanianstar@gmail.com and check out the official Facebook and Instagram account of the Guamanian Star. Guamanian Star is powered by the official radio partners Star 101, Boss 104, and The Point in cooperation with Tumon Sands Plaza and Glam Portraits. The Guamanian Star live on stage every Sunday at Tumon Sands Plaza. Set yourself apart. Sing it from the heart. The Guamanian Star.
Set yourself apart. Sing it from the heart.
Get a box of Post or Kellogg's cereal for only 99 cents when you fuel up on $35 or more of mid-grade or premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See store for details. Get a 75-ounce bottle of On Dish Soap for only $5.95 when you fuel up on $35 or more of mid-grade or premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See store for details. Get a Bounty paper towel 2-pack for only 99 cents when you fuel up on $35 or more of mid-grade or premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See store for details. Circle K. Take it easy.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here we are, back on Tall Tales here, the last day of the week. Suffer day for Jose and I. We love being on Tall Tales. We love chatting with our tailgaters, whether it's on the air, on Facebook, or whatever, and we won't be able to do it for 2 whole days. We'll be miserable during those 2 days, but we'll be back on Monday. Here's today's card. I start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And you know about how that works. Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. Paul Zerzan had the temerity of saying that this dish, which is served often at parties here on the island, is actually red and not orange. Whereupon the Daily News came back and slammed him, saying, "Readers to Zerzan, leave our red rice alone." So I've used this as a paradigm to show how the difference between the narrative and the facts work. So you'll see the bottom word, number 2, you'll see it says red. The word is red, but the letters are orange. So the word red is the narrative, and the actual color, orange, is the facts. And we see that all the time. So I ran across a couple of other examples here just recently. I was poking around in the fridge this morning, and I came across this red fruit. I don't know if anybody can tell me what the name of this red fruit is, but I found it in my refrigerator. Here's how it looks. Yeah, it's a red fruit. So if you know what it is, maybe you can tell me on Facebook, okay? And then Pam Tuval, a very helpful lady, chimes in and says, speaking of blondes, why did the blonde take so long to choose a brand of orange juice? Answer, because the label said concentrate. Which, of course, would lead me to the question, what color is orange juice? It's got to be red, right? Okay, so we start out with systemic racism, as is our usual custom. Nothing new on Ray and the fence. It's still there, still as ugly as ever. And so far today, there haven't been anybody any traffic accidents occurring inside of drive-through restaurants or quasi-drive-through restaurants like Jerry Kitchen or the Retirement Fund. And let's see, next on the agenda, next on the card, is Anonymous versus the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. Then we have Pacell, that's Wayne Pacell from the Animal Welfare Association, versus Ken San Nicolas. Ken San Nicolas. Who is Ken San Nicolas? He's about to become famous. Ken San Nicolas and Chelsea Munya Brecht, Director of Agriculture. Not the Director of the Department of Agriculture, but the Director of Agriculture. Then we've got the Supreme Court versus Brandon. Or wait a minute, the Supreme Court versus Biden. I always make that mistake, and deliberately.
It's commonplace.
Yeah, and then Tall Tales versus Separatists, if we have time. So starting out with Anonymous versus Guam Board of Medical Examiners. And it starts, and it's an article that ran in the Post. And we start out with a really difficult name to pronounce, Dr. Ugochukwu Akoma. I'm just going to call him Dr. Akoma and Akoma from now on. Left Iowa following allegations of sexual misconduct against him that led the state's medical board to require that a female chaperone accompany him when seeing patients, even if he were to stay in the state. Now notice it says were to accompany him when seeing patients, not seeing female patients, but any patients. And given yesterday's item on the card, tranny versus tranny, I could understand them not wanting to specify, because how would you know what a patient is? And even more important, why should you care? And if he is one who commits sexual assaults and you accuse him of only assaulting female patients, doesn't that put Dr. Akoma in kind of a bad light, Jose? He's discriminating against...
How dare he?
He's discriminating against trannies. Akoma decided to leave Iowa and eventually landed on Guam. On Guam, a woman who survived sexual assault as a child needed a doctor to help her to combat depression and anxiety from past sexual assaults. Boy, did she make a poor choice. The victim, who wished to remain anonymous, was a patient of Dr. Akoma in October 2021. Her first visit with Akoma was October 11, 2021. During that visit, she told him about her sexual traumas. I'm going to skip over some of the more salacious parts of this article. If you're interested, you can go to the Post and read them yourselves.
It was kind of weird that they were kind of graphic in this article.
They were.
I was like, is this a newspaper or did I pick up a tabloid?
Yeah, it's kind of looks like an introduction to a pornographic website, doesn't it? Yeah, they were very graphic here, and I'll skip all the graphic parts. But anyhow, we get down to and it's a long article, too.
It's hard to choose.
Yeah. A lot about allegations about Akoma touching her, using the wrong language, etc. And then we get to complaints filed. The last quote here from the victim, I just feel that he really exploited my history as a victim. Complaints filed. She filed a criminal complaint with the Guam Police Department the following day, but in 2 months that passed, she said there was little communication from GPD. That's probably because the chief of police knew that there wasn't any good police work. He knew that from the get-go, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
If he won't pay attention to a situation where a car leaves the highway, jumps the safety aisle, and goes over the curb, runs through a parking lot, and drives all the way through Jerry Kitchen, you got to wonder how much curiosity he has about law-breaking activity. The police forwarded the case to the Attorney General's office. GPD Chief of Police Stephen Ignacio told the Daily Post the police investigation is complete and the case was forwarded to the Attorney General. The AG's office will decide whether to pursue a criminal case in court. Now, we all know that from our education at the University of Law and Order. We have the police who solve cases and the Attorney General or the prosecutor who prosecutes them, right? And then we go on to the spokesperson for the Attorney General's office. That would be Katlina Chatfarus. And Katlina Chatfarus said, I am unable to say at this time how or if a criminal case will move forward. We will continue to provide updates to the victim. I wonder if she's using Vanessa Williams as the person to help her text these releases. I am unable to say at this time how or if a criminal case will move forward. The Post also reached out to Acoma and left several messages with his office. On Thursday, Acoma sent a WhatsApp message indicating he would address the issue later that day. However, when the Post reporter and photographer arrived at Acoma's clinic, along with Mike Wallace of 60 Minutes, may he rest in peace, little ambush journalism there, he declined to comment on the allegations and instead wanted to speak about a cancer patient under his care. He asserted the meeting was to address only the cancer patient. However, a screenshot of the communications with Acoma shows that the Post's request for an interview was regarding the sexual assault allegations. Quote, let's try to promote something that will help us and very little of the things that will bring us down, Acoma said. Yeah, he's looking out for the public interest, yeah. Acoma walked away. The victim also submitted a complaint to the Guam Board of Medical Examiners in November of 2021. It was to be addressed at the meeting scheduled in December 2021 and earlier this month, but the meetings did not occur. The meeting for my complaint has been delayed several times since December 8. I feel I'm not being given a chance for justice, the victim said. And then the rest of the article talks about Acoma being disciplined in Iowa, or maybe disciplined, and then allegations also in Arkansas, Iowa, California, and Texas. But going back to the Guam Board of Medical Examiners, now this is on the card is Anonymous versus Guam Board of Medical Examiners. And I have the agenda for the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. It ran in yesterday's paper, or maybe it was today's paper. And there is a list of old business. And on the list of old business, there are complaints. And there are a lot of complaints. Apparently, the last 3 digits of the complaint number indicate when the complaint was filed. For instance, the first item on the list is GBME-CO-19-012-3. And then the next one is 014, and then 016, and then 1001. I'm sorry, those all were 19, going back to 2019. Then we go to 2020, 01, 2020, 02, 2020, 05, 2020 07, 2020 09, and on to the next column where we get up to 2020 as were 2021 07, 06, and 08. So then I look at the agenda, and that you are directed to the website of the Board of Medical Examiners for the names of people who are applying for licenses. So I figure, well, maybe this complaint will be listed there. So I go to the website, and old business, sure enough, there are several complaints going all the way back to 06 20 2019, and coming all the way up to 09 15 2021, but no but no 011 2021, which would have been a claim. So it's not going to be on the agenda for this meeting either. So if they're that far behind, they need to do something dramatic. And if it were my complaint and I didn't see it at least on the list, I'd wonder, what, did they just junk it? Did they shucks can it? But that's where it is. It wasn't heard in December, and it's not going to be heard in the next board meeting. So that's why I put this on the calendar as anonymous versus the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. It's a complaint taken right out of David Lebowski's book, that he complained to the Guam Board of Medical Examiners and nothing happened.
And it just really does seem ineffective board in itself for the reasons of those complaints.
Yeah.
Which, you know, a complaint at this degree or this urgency, and it's not even being heard in the past year.
And the gentleman is apparently still practicing medicine. Now, I'll tip my hat to the Guam Bar Association disciplinary system. If it's a serious violation, they can do an immediate suspension while the matter is playing out in the appellate process. They wouldn't let someone, you know, who's stealing money from clients have 3 or 4 more months of unfettered stealing while they go through the due process part of it. But I have mentioned before that what the Guam Board of Medical Examiners needs, they need their own lawyer, and they need to have an investigator. You can't expect the doctors to do that kind of work.
And I'm curious, when the victim found out about this doctor's history, the Post did a very good job of investigating, and it's not just allegations. These are allegations that were acted on, and a resolution was levied upon him, or I guess a punishment, but I don't know what you would call it. But it seems a lot serious. Did the Guam Board know about this, and did they take that in consideration before they gave him his license? That's what I'd like to know.
That's another question. Did this figure into his getting a license in the first place? And we had this other gentleman, Pasatiempo, same story, and they're trying to extradite him from Alaska now to try him for criminal offenses. And then, of course, with the Guam Police Department, with our, you know, if Acoma had talked to somebody in Steve's neighborhood about when Steve was home and where he parked his motorcycle, you know, the cops would have been on that like a duck on a June bug, or like white on rice. You can bet on that. But if it doesn't deal with Steve's motorcycle, and if he isn't in on it at the get-go, he doesn't seem to show much interest. Next item on the card, let's take a short break and we'll go to the next item.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Okay, so Shepard changed his mind?
He said you did a little faux pas there. It's not white on rice. It's like orange on rice.
I mean, orange on rice. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I kind of screwed that up, didn't I? It's like orange on rice.
He's a sharp listener.
Yeah, he is. Good call, Shepard. Okay, next item here. PNC versus Ken San Nicolas. And this ran in the Post. A little help from PNC News. Rights group. Image shows agriculture employee participated in cockfighting. This guy, Wayne Pacell, is not going to give up. So if you're still doing it, this would be a really good time to stop and say, well, it was great while it lasted, but it's over now, and I don't want to get in trouble. Animal Wellness Action, an animal rights organization based in D.C., that has been monitoring cockfighting activities on Guam, has released footage of a cockfight that reportedly took place in Jigo last year, which allegedly involved a Guam Department of Agriculture commodity inspector, according to AWA President Wayne Pacell. The cockfight occurred around the end of June last year, according to Pacell, who pointed out the alleged agriculture inspector to be a man in the footage wearing a black and white striped T-shirt holding a rooster that would soon be pitted against another bird. Now, the only news outlet that told us what the man's name was PNC. PNC says his name is Ken San Nicolas, an agriculture inspector at the Department of Agriculture. Ken San Nicolas. Now, why do you suppose PNC and the PDN didn't run his name? You got any idea, Jose?
No idea. Oh, they love cats.
It's a personnel matter.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
All right.
You should never mention anyone's name in a news article, you know. Yeah, you can't, like if it's about the president, you can't say Joe Biden or let's go Brandon. It's a personnel matter. Okay, so Ken San Nicolas was the guy in the picture holding a rooster as part of the cockfighting procedure. The fight lasted perhaps 30 seconds. One of the birds was mortally wounded very quickly because of the knives that are attached to the bird's legs. These are typically long knife fights. The blades as long as 3 inches can puncture eyes, can puncture lungs, can be a heart stab, Pacell said during a press conference Thursday afternoon. There was all sorts of gambling, and the inspector, again, if that is the proper information that is provided to us, won a considerable amount of money at this fighting pit. So he's not only a Godzinero, he's a skillful Godzinero, and he's not going to give up something that's going to make him some money.
Is Reverend Tax a part of these winnings? I don't think so, huh?
No, and we had an article not long ago where Daphne Shimizu said, no, we don't draw any tax from illegal cockfights. I wonder if they ever got the tax from legal cockfights, because, you know, we didn't have a cockpit license board for 10 years before the big band came along. We hadn't appointed the members, etc., so it was basically overcome by desuetude. Going on with the article here. Guam Department of Agriculture Director Chelsea Munya Brecht did not address inquiries about the alleged commodity inspector, including whether the issue is under investigation at the agency, but did respond to some statements made in an AWA press release. The footage and other supporting documents have been presented to officials at the U.S. Department of Justice, and AWA has urged them to open an investigation and pursue criminal charges, according to Pacelle. The organization is also calling for agriculture to terminate the inspector once an independent review confirms his identity. Pacelle said that their research indicated the inspector has served at agriculture for the past 5 years. There have been 11,323 fighting roosters shipped to Guam during that time that he has served, Pacelle said. But the president of AWA also stated that Munya Brecht, the director, has had a direct role in approving these shipments, despite AWA sharing evidence that the birds are contraband. Pacelle said the director should relinquish her authority over the import of live animals to Guam, as she is not screening for fighting birds and is, quote, rubber stamping these shipments that are known cockfighting shipments. AWA and the Animal Wellness Foundation had been tracking a growing number of bird shipments to the island using records from the Guam Department of Agriculture, which they contend to be the illegal shipment of fighting birds for cockfighting activities. However, Munya Brecht has challenged that assertion. Top shippers to Guam, according to AWA release that coincided with Thursday's press conference, are based in Oklahoma and California. And here's Munya Brecht's statement. Mr. Pacelle, in his own press release, acknowledges that top shippers of fighting birds are residents of the mainland United States. Instead of looking across the ocean, he should look at his own backyard where supply is being raised and shipped here, Munya Brecht said.
So she admits it.
Yeah, apparently so. And then something that didn't make the article, but the mayor of Molesu was asked for his comment, to which he said, well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Forgetting that we're talking about chickens and not geese.
You know, I hear a meth dealer is going to use the same defense argument. You know, instead of going after me, you should go after the people in your own backyard in the States.
Yeah, you know that this.
It's not my fault it's him here.
This methamphetamine, you know, it was shipped to me from California. So you shouldn't be going for me. You should be going for the guy that shipped it to me.
But didn't you say it's not coming here? Well, if it is here, if the chickens are here.
Yeah, Chelsea's got a real knack with dealing with the press. But, you know, I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you're still doing it, it's time to quit.
And it's not a very favorite argument to talk against this, but my main thing is you have all this money going through. There's some tax evasion that's going on. And the people who are crying that it's cultural have to understand, well, this could be a bridging moment where we connect our culture, quote-unquote culture, to the culture in the States, because they've been fighting chickens for a long time, too. Mm-hmm. Where do you think they're coming from?
That's true. Very true. Now, I have addressed this before, and I have a mixed thought process on this. Number one, I don't think the federal government, the national government, should be regulating cockfighting. That is a matter of local law, and it should be, if people in a state want to ban cockfighting, it should be their business, not the national government's business. Now, the national government can certainly deal with the interstate commerce of chickens. That's clearly within their realm, but they shouldn't have the ability to ban cockfighting in any of the states if they did. Now, when it comes to the territories, we all know that they don't need that interstate commerce nexus. They've got Article 4, Section 3, which gives them the jurisdictional base to act, in the case of Guam, as though they were the local legislature. That's the effect of Article 4, Section 3. I'm surprised that Michael Bavacqua doesn't beat that drum a little bit harder. Okay, let's take a break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back to PNC versus Ken San Nicolas.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The mandate's biggest blow yet. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. The Supreme Court blocking the president's vaccine mandate for companies with more than 100 employees. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki with this reaction.
57%, according to a Navigator poll of Americans, support vaccine requirements. According to a Wills Tower Watson's report, a survey of 534 U.S. employers, a majority, 57% of respondents have or will require their employees to get vaccinated.
The Supreme Court let stand a mandate for most healthcare workers, which President Biden says will save lives. Former President Trump releases a statement about the rulings. In his words, he said, "The Supreme Court has spoken, confirming what we all knew. Biden's disastrous mandates are unconstitutional." North Korea appears to be at it again. Citing South Korean military sources, Reuters reports that North Korea fired an unidentified projectile into the sea off its east coast on Friday. The launch came hours after the North issued a statement berating the U.S. for imposing fresh sanctions on the regime over its two earlier missile tests this month. Also on the sanctions front, Senate Democrats defeated a bill by Republican Ted Cruz that would have sanctioned a Russian natural gas pipeline to Germany. Democrats say it comes at the wrong time when the U.S. is working with Germany and other NATO allies to show a united front against Russia.
Jake Sullivan at the White House briefing said after days of discussion this week, the U.S. is in touch with Russian leaders with an eye toward what America hopes will be Russian de-escalation.
We're prepared to keep moving forward down the diplomatic path in good faith, and we're prepared to respond if Russia acts.
Gernal Scott, Fox News.
America's listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to nectac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Alec Baldwin has yet to turn over his phone to investigators looking into the shooting death on the set of his movie, Rust.
Even though a search warrant has been issued and the actor continues to insist he is complying with the investigation into the accidental shooting of Helena Hutchins on the set of Rust. The Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office issued the update Thursday. A search warrant was executed for Baldwin's cell phone December 16th. In a media release, the Sheriff's Office noted it requested assistance from the District Attorney's Office. The update comes days after the actor took to Instagram to say any suggestion that he wasn't complying with requests from search warrants is a lie. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
A federal grand jury indicts Baltimore's state attorney Marilyn Mosby on charges of perjury and lying in a series of financial transactions so she could withdraw money from her city retirement account and buy 2 homes in Florida. Her attorney pledges to fight the charges and accuses prosecutors of harboring a personal grudge against her. It's back to remote learning for students in Minneapolis, at least for now, as the city deals with a staffing shortage.
As it joins a growing list of school districts in the area and around the country, moving to remote learning amid a surge in COVID cases.
We are hopeful that it's a rapid rise and a rapid decline in terms of number of cases. But these next few weeks are going to be something that we've not seen before in Minnesota.
Minnesota Health Director Jan Malcolm, as the state also earmarks millions in federal funding to fortify hospital staffing. Last week, Minnesota's Mayo Clinic fired 700 employees for refusing the COVID shot. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
The Eat Fresh Refresh goes on at Subway. You've tried the Cali Fresh steak. Now you can enjoy the Cali Fresh turkey. One of only 2 Cali Fresh subs. The Cali Fresh turkey is packed with deli-thin, oven-roasted turkey piled high on a bed of hickory smoked bacon, smashed avocado, and fresh mozzarella. Crafted for premium freshness, the Cali Fresh turkey is made on freshly baked, hearty, multi-grain bread with your choice of fresh veggies hand-sliced daily in restaurants. Treat yourself to a Cali Fresh turkey today. Subway. Eat fresh.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
So back to PNC versus Ken San Nicolas. Refreshing your recollection, Ken San Nicolas is the Department of Agriculture employee who's some kind of an inspector who was caught in a video at a cockfight. And Wayne Pacell has surfaced that, sent it around, sent it to the Department of Justice, etc. I went through this and then I shared my own take on the matter. And first of all, I'm a federalist, meaning I believe in the federal system of the United States as it was first put into place, where we had really semi-independent states and a central government that operated on powers delegated to it by the states, that the national government was not a unitary form of government. We had a federal system. We don't have a federal system anymore. We've got a national government where the folks in Washington think they run the whole show, and they notice that we have 50 independent, we have 50 administrative districts scattered around the country, but not to pay attention to them. So the states should make criminal laws about things like cockfighting, not the national government. On the other hand, though, when you have a law on the books and you don't obey the law, and the government of the territory basically says, even if employees of a government of Guam are involved in it, we don't care we're just going to come back with snotty wisecracks when it's brought to our attention. We don't have a government then. We have what looks to me like anarchy. And I don't favor anarchy. I'd prefer a national government to anarchy. And this whole virtue signaling, local virtue signaling about cockfighting, Jose Terlahi and I think it was Senator Shelton who added a provision to the budget that enforcing the law against cockfighting will be our lowest priority.
I found it interesting that the animal abuse bill that came into law had a provision, except if you're a chicken.
Yeah, we aren't going to abuse any. We're tough on animals all over the place. Even people that want to have sex with animals are going to have to hold off because we have a law. We put a law in place against bestiality. So every kind of cruelty to animals, except for one, chickens, yeah. And that's the third part of my thought process. I don't like the federal government involved in it. I don't like anarchy. And I don't like cruelty to animals for someone's recreation. And that's what we have with this cockfighting thing. Okay, I've got, let's see, I've already talked to the most dangerous man in the room. And it's time for another Joe who wants to talk about viruses and vaccines. Is he a little bit behind the power curve here, Jose? I guess so, but we'll give him a minute anyhow. Go ahead, another Joe.
Sorry about that. It has to do with these mandates and vaccines, and it seems as though they're speaking about falling behind. The vaccines are becoming less and less useful because the Wuhan coronavirus mutations, the strains they are quickly, and it becomes so different that they're more and more resistant to the vaccinations. So, but the bright side, they're hopefully more and more mild. So it seems as though the natural immunity is the best way to go, and to make it mandatory to get more and more boosters. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, I just wanted to throw in that point of view that
I have a rhetorical question for you, another Joe.
Okay.
When it comes to the Wuhan virus and the diseases that it causes, when did making a lot of sense ever have a role in this entire thought process? And
the only conclusion I have is it's really just a power control thing for those in power.
Taking you back to the checkpoints on Marine Corps Drive where you had to wait 45 minutes to pull up a National Guardsman who would tell you, wear your mask, social distance, and wash your hands. Made no sense whatsoever. And the longer we see it, the more it becomes apparent that this whole idea, you have to wear a mask no matter what you're doing. You have to wear a mask. And I discovered another hazard with the mask today. I was in an office downtown wearing my mask, of course, and I had to walk around the corner, and there was a desk at the corner with an edge that stuck out a little bit.
Ouch.
And, of course, with that stupid mask on, your peripheral vision does not go downward. You really got to turn your head and look to see where you're walking because... just walking normal fashion, you aren't going to see what you're going to bump into. Just another example, I think, of the silliness of the stuff that our governor has gotten us into.
Yeah, so hopefully this next election, they come to the census, the Democrats, and say, hey, we keep doing this, it's definitely going to count against us and less votes for Democrats, and Republicans to get the majority, then they make the policy not to continue these mandates and nonsense. So anyway, Uncle Bob, thanks for your time. I'll just keep listening.
Okay, another Joe. Okay, so let's go on to the next item on the card. This is residence versus global dorm. Now, you recall that a building up in Mighty that has a sign on the front, global dorm, comma, Mighty, looks kind of like a motel, was leased by the government to provide housing for the homeless. And there's a headline in today's paper, global dorm homeless residents being moved due to rat infestation.
Somebody is narking on them?
Homeless families are being moved out of the global dorm shelter in Mighty because of a rat infestation, according to Catholic Social Services Director Diana Calvo. Calvo, whose organization provides and supervises case management at the facility, said residents are being moved out and no new people are moving in. However, we do expect the crop of rats to increase. This week, I'm pretty confident, if not next week, there will no longer be anyone at Global Dorm. So apparently they're still staying there. Said Sarah Thomas Nettydog, Executive Director of the Office of Homelessness Assistance and Poverty Prevention. Now, there is quite a mouthful.
Yeah.
The Office of Homelessness Assistance and Poverty Prevention. Well, I can tell you, the poverty prevention, you know how you prevent poverty, Jose?
How is that?
Give people a lot of money, and then they won't be poor anymore. It's just so simple. Of the 170 residents who were in the shelter in December, there are 48 still waiting to be placed in another location, according to Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio. They have either transitioned to other residential programs or to permanent housing or to a place where they will be safe and in a healthier environment. Calvo said some have been placed in Catholic Social Services Guma San Jose homeless shelter in Dedido, but officials are continuing to look for more permanent housing, which she said is the organization's long-term goal. Thomas Nettydog said there are no plans to move anyone back to Global Dorm. Changes to the annual point in contact count scheduled for January 27-28 were also discussed. Margaret Hattori Uchima, I feel kind of bad that I only have one surname. I feel like I'm being left out here. My mother's maiden name was Harlow, so maybe I should start calling myself Robert Harlow Klitzkie. Sounds so much more. Harlow is a much nicer sounding name than Klitzkie anyhow, isn't it? Yeah.
It rolls.
It rolls, yeah, Harlow. It just rolls off your tongue, not like Klitzkie, where it's got a couple of stops in the middle of it. Margaret Hattori Uchima. Wait a minute. Margaret Hattori Uchima. I'm putting my emphasis on the wrong syllables if those are Japanese names. Margaret Hattori Uchima of Guam Homeless Coalition said the count will span 2 days instead of one, etc. Volunteers will be limited to coalition organization members. So we go from rats to Margaret Uchima Hattori. Nice story. Okay, anyhow, if you really had your heart set in moving into the Global Dorm in Mighty, there's a rat infestation, so that's not going to happen.
But they said that nobody's going to be moving back in, right?
Uh-huh.
So it begs, sorry, I almost did a faux pas there. There's a question there.
Uh-huh.
Is there really a rat infestation, or is this a relocation issue? Because there has been, I used to live in that neighborhood there, and you remember that bakery that had the window busted in?
Yeah.
That's right next door to that place, and there's been a couple other incidences around there that have been closely related to that housing area there.
Are you saying it's a high crime area?
I don't. I'm just saying it's very curious that all of a sudden there's a rat problem and nobody's moving back in.
Yeah.
Because they can fix it. It's not hard.
If you have a rat problem, if you kill all the rats and keep them from coming back, yeah.
Then you solve the problem with the homelessness.
Uh-huh.
But it doesn't look like it's going to be used.
I guess they're worried about the rats becoming homeless. So we'll move the people out and let the rats stay there. Then the rats won't be homeless.
It's that animal abuse bill.
Yeah. Wayne is afraid of incurring the wrath of Wayne Pacell.
At least they're not fighting the rats.
Next item on the calendar is the Supreme Court versus Supreme Court versus Biden. Justices block employer vaccine or test rule, but allow vaccine mandate for healthcare workers. And I talked to Ray about this morning. I've had a chance to read a little bit of the language from the court decision, so I want to spend some time on this here. Get out the Law and Order notebooks. The article ran on a website called law.com, which surprisingly is about various legal matters. Yes, primarily for lawyers. Lawyers, as you were, justices block vaccine or test rule but allow vaccine mandate for healthcare workers. The sub-headline is, the question before us is not how to respond to the pandemic, but who holds the power to do so, the justices said in an order blocking OSHA's vaccine or test requirements for large employers. Exactly right. And I mentioned that the other day on Ray's show, too. It's not how many kids, how many people have, that's not what the Supreme Court should be considering. That would be for the legislature. The kinds of questions the court should be considering are just as it's phrased here, not how to respond, but who holds the power to do so. The Biden administration's vaccine mandate for healthcare workers will go into effect nationally, ruled a 5-4 U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday, but the court in a separate 6-3 vote blocked the vaccine or test requirement for large employers. The justices' ruling came just days after they heard more than 3 hours of arguments on 2 sets of emergency applications. In one set, the administration asked the High Court to lift injunctions halting the vaccine rule for healthcare workers in facilities receiving Medicare and Medicaid funding. And in the other, a group of businesses in 27 Republican-led states wanted the court to order a stop to the employer rule, which while appeals proceeded in the lower court. So I explained this before. The Supreme Court has a regular docket where it hears 70, 75, maybe 80 cases a year based on granting of petitions of writs of certiorari. When cert is granted, the matter goes on the Supreme Court's calendar. It is extensively briefed by the parties. It comes on for public oral argument. The oral argument is conducted, and the Supreme Court will issue a decision usually 6 or 7 months later. The Supreme Court has a shadow docket where it can stay a decision in the courts below pending further appeal of that particular matter. And these 2 cases that we're talking about came to the Supreme Court on its shadow docket, not its regular docket. And I explained this morning that the stay can be granted by a single Supreme Court justice. Every one of the 13 circuits has a Supreme Court justice assigned to it. And when that Court of Appeals makes a decision, it's possible for counsel to petition that appellate court, to stay its ruling pending appeal to the Supreme Court or whatever. And if it's denied, then the application for its stay can be made to the Supreme Court, and one justice can say granted or denied. Usually not, it's not a public decision. You usually don't even know why they did it. This is much, much more involved because although it can be done, it's seldom done. That single justice can refer the matter to the whole Supreme Court. And if it's referred to the whole Supreme Court, the usual practice is in a couple of days, a decision will come out saying granted or denied with little or no explanation and no public argument. But this time the matter was set down for public argument, and there was 3 hours of argument on it, and the Supreme Court actually issued a written decision. Now, because these cases come up on the shadow docket, it doesn't mean that's the end of the issue. The fact that the Supreme Court stayed the ruling in the Sixth Circuit saying that the general 100 or more employees mandate is stayed doesn't mean that that was the way it would go in the Supreme Court. If it gets to the Supreme Court, it could possibly go the other way. Going back to this article, the mandate for healthcare workers would cover more than 17 million employees at 76,000 facilities, the administration said. The challenges posed by the global pandemic do not allow a federal agency to exercise power that Congress has not conferred upon it, the majority in an unsigned opinion said. At the same time, such unprecedented circumstances provide no grounds for limiting the exercise of authorities the agency has long been recognized to have. Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, and Barrett dissented. That's in the healthcare worker case. And so it kind of goes down the usual lines, right? 4 conservatives dissent, the 3 liberals plus Kavanaugh and Roberts go along with the mandate. The majority's opinion said those jurisdictions issued by district courts in Louisiana and Missouri are stayed, while appeals by states and others are considered by courts of appeals for the 5th and 8th circuits. The majority noted the vaccine mandate goes farther than the Health and Human Services Secretary has done in the past to control infections in Medicare and Medicaid facilities, but added he has never had to address an infection problem of this scale and scope before. In any event, there can be no doubt that addressing the infection problems in Medicare and Medicaid facilities is what he does. Thomas, leading the dissenters, wrote the statutory provisions relied upon by the government for the authority to require vaccine related only to the administration of Medicaid and Medicare and the practical management of direction of those programs. Quote, these cases are not about the efficacy or importance of Wuhan virus vaccines, Thomas wrote. They are only about whether CMS has the statutory authority to force healthcare workers by coercing their employers to undergo a medical procedure they do not want and cannot undo. Because the government has not made a strong showing that Congress gave CMS that broad authority, I would deny the stays pending appeal. Still my favorite justice. These are the kinds of questions that the Supreme Court should be answering. Separately, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration issued the workplace rule as an emergency temporary standard for employers with 100 or more employees. It would cover about 80 million workers who must either vaccinate or test for COVID weekly and wear masks. The question before us is not how to respond to the pandemic, but who holds the power to do so. The answer is clear. Under the law as it stands today, that power rests with the states and Congress, not OSHA. The states and Congress, not OSHA. And of course, the leading case in the government and the question of does the government have the authority to mandate vaccinations? The leading case is Jacobson versus who's the other party? Massachusetts, a state. Breyer, Sotomayor, and Kagan dissented, stating in their dissent, after all, we're liberals. We got to go with the Democrats. They said, in our view, the court's order seriously misapplies the applicable legal standards, and in so doing, it stymies the federal government's ability to counter the unparalleled threat that the Wuhan virus poses to our nation's workers.
Good. Make that the legislature's job.
Exactly. Acting outside of its competence and without legal basis, the court displaces the judgments of the government officials given the responsibility to respond to workplace health emergencies. Karen Harnd, Executive Director of the National Federation of Small Business Legal Center, applauded the blocking of the employer vaccine or test rule, saying in a statement, "Small businesses try to recover after almost 2 years of significant business destructions. The last thing they need is a mandate that would cause more business challenges. We are pleased the Supreme Court stopped the rule from taking effect while the courts consider whether or not it's legal. We are optimistic that the courts will ultimately agree with us that OSHA does not have the emergency authority to regulate the entire American workforce." Let's stop there for a short break, and I'll come back and spend some more time talking about what the Supreme Court did and what the Supreme Court didn't do.
It's the biggest singing competition and reality show on Guam. The Holiday Show with Jay Martin proudly presents the Guamanian Star. Watch how the talented Guamanian artists conquer the shining star stage and elevate the local Guam cultural artistry to the global entertainment quality. Interested parties can email theguamanianstar@gmail.com and check out the official Facebook and Instagram account of the Guamanian Star. Guamanian Star is powered by the official radio partners Star 101, Boss 104, and The Point in cooperation with Tumon Sands Plaza and Glam Portraits. The Guamanian Star live on stage every Sunday at Tumon Sands Plaza. Set yourself apart. Sing it from the heart. The Guamanian Star. Set yourself apart.
Sing it from the heart.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Okay, so here we are, back on Tall Tales here. I got about 27 more minutes before I turn into a pumpkin because it's the weekend coming up. Picking up on this article from law.com on the Supreme Court's decision on the employer mandate for the COVID test or for vaccine. Picking up, but health law scholar Lawrence Gostin of Georgetown University's Institute for National and Global Health said the decision will prolong the pandemic. The OSHA employer mandate was the single most effective policy for getting people vaccinated, he said. Without a wide-reaching federal mandate, it's unlikely the national vaccination rate of just over 60% will improve. We are way behind our peer nations. The Supreme Court's decision makes it hard to see how we will eventually combat Omicron and future COVID variants. Even more concerning is that the court is eviscerating the very ability of the federal government to protect Americans. The justices are overturning decades of precedent upholding federal public health powers. Now, this is exactly the approach to government that I'm not in favor of. We have a severe emergency. The federal government has to act. Well, it's not the federal government here, it's the Congress. And if it's so severe and so easily articulated, then one would think that that argument could be made to Congress and they would give that kind of authority to OSHA. But what this guy is saying, this legal scholar named Lawrence Gostin, is saying, if it's a really serious emergency, you can do away with the niceties and just let an agency head make the law all by himself. Somebody that's not appointed by the president, not confirmed by Congress, let him make the law all by himself. We don't need no stinking Congress and this stuff about passing bills, etc. It's too hard. That's kind of the trap that he would have us follow. And this is just not a good way to run the government, because it takes us back to a question that I've posed on Tall Tales before. And that is, does emergency create power? If you can make a really good argument that there's an emergency, can government officials exercise more power than they could in the absence of an emergency? Because if the answer to that is yes, that emergency can create power, then you have to flip it over and ask it from the other direction. Can power create an emergency? The people in power say, we've got an emergency, we've got to take more power. And that's the genius of our federal government. I have a sermon that I was going to read today, but I didn't bring it with me. I'll read it on Monday. The genius of the way the federal government was set up, that no single part of the government has all of the power. The power is spread around. What Thomas Jefferson referred to is, because men are not angels, what we have to do is we have to match interest against interest. So when it comes to legislature, legislature makes laws, but we'll give the governor a role in it, but not the complete role. That comes back to the legislature. The executive executes the laws, and the courts theoretically tell us what the laws say and who's breaking the law. And we wouldn't want all of those powers combined in one particular place. But the thinking of someone like Lawrence Gostin would, over time, allow almost all of the power to be consolidated into the executive branch, where you wouldn't need, if you wanted to have something done, you wouldn't need a bill. You just need a letter to the right administrative official, and perhaps some political strings to pull or something like that. So back to this article. During arguments on the workplace rule, conservative justices appeared increasingly skeptical of OSHA's ability to issue the broad-reaching mandate. OSHA has authority to issue emergency temporary standards for a maximum of 6 months to address a grave danger from a substance or agents determined to be toxic or physically harmful, or from new hazards. That's from the statute. In National Federation of Independent Business versus Department of Labor, consolidated with Ohio versus Department of Labor, Scott Keller of Lehosky Keller, counsel to the business group, argued that the workplace rule would create a massive economic shift, causing billions of dollars in cost to businesses. He also said employees would quit, and this would exacerbate a worker shortage, etc. These are good arguments to make to the legislature. Chief Justice Roberts suggested that the states or Congress may have the more appropriate actors in this situation. Yes. He's apparently been hanging out with Justice Thomas. He also questioned whether the administration was attempting a, quote, workaround by going agency by agency, which is something the Biden administration said. The chief of staff said, well, we're going to do a workaround. U.S. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar countered that exposure to Wuhan virus on the job is the biggest threat to workers in OSHA's history. The court should reject the argument that the agency is powerless to address that great danger. The administration, she added, was not attempting a workaround, but was trying to use the legal authorities available to address the problem. She found a sympathetic audience in the court's 3 liberal justices. I am surprised. Who had statistics on infections and deaths from the virus at their fingertips, which were just dead wrong. Sotomayor made a tremendous fool out of herself with her statistics. They were right at her fingertips, right? Yeah.
Apply that to everything else she puts out.
Yes. More and more people are dying every day. More and more people are getting sick every day. Justice Elena Kagan said, now that's right up there with Ernie Chargaloff legal reasoning, right? More and more people are dying every day. More and more people are getting sick every day.
The sun comes up, the moon goes down.
Yeah, this is the policy that is most geared to stopping all this. Once again, a good argument to make at the legislature. The court overall seemed more willing to accept the healthcare worker mandate. Roberts said it was closer fit to the authority of the Secretary of Health and Human Services. I think it would be bizarre to say that the Secretary's authority to protect health and safety of Medicare and Medicaid patients does not include the authority to adopt a measure that you see other regulators adopting, the medical community urging, and other providers adopting voluntarily. Justice Brett Kavanaugh noted an unusual aspect of the case was that those who would be relegated, as you were regulated by the mandate, were not present among the challengers. All of the major medical and health associations, he said, supported the mandate. Where are the regulated parties complaining about the regulation? He asked. But Louisiana Deputy Attorney General Sue Ossetti said enforcing the mandate would lead to an imminent crisis in rural areas when healthcare workers already in short supply choose to quit their jobs. So we heard a lot of argument that really wasn't the kind of argument that should move the Supreme Court. Now, I found another article here from a guy named Tom Woods, who quoted some other language from the decisions, which is the kind of stuff that the court should be concentrating on. Once again, by way of explanation, I am a vigorous opponent of kritarchy. Kritarchy is a fancy Greek word that means government by judges. We should not be governed by judges. If we want to have a democracy, we've got to be governed by the democratic process. In our situation in the United States, we have a representative democracy. We don't, here on Guam, we don't make the laws ourselves. We vote for people to the legislature who make the laws and resolutions, and a governor who executes the law. In the same way in the national government, the Congress makes the laws, the president executes the laws. One thing that we don't need is for the courts to determine what the law, or excuse me, not what the law is, but what the law should be. You know, the Congress didn't do this right, so we're going to show them how to do it. Kritarchy. And here's what this article says. This article from Tom Woods. The Supreme Court has upheld the vaccination requirement for healthcare workers as a condition for receiving Medicare and Medicaid. Opinions like this one are maddening to read because they confine themselves to questions such as whether the Secretary of Health and Human Services exceeded his congressionally granted authority when imposing the requirement, which is a logical question, but Tom goes to the heart of the matter. The court then proceeds to explain that the Secretary imposing requirements regarding the administration of Medicare and Medicaid. Quote, then going on, not considered is whether the federal government's authority to intervene in matters involving health, whether or not given statutory expression by Congress or delegated to a healthcare bureaucrat, derives from or how it can be justified. Where does that power come from? And once again, I would go to my favorite book, the United States Constitution. I would direct your attention to Article 1, Section 8, which begins, the Congress shall have the power to, and then there are 17 paragraphs after that. And those are the things that Congress has the power to do: borrow money on the credit of the United States, regulate commerce with the foreign nations among the several states and with the Indian tribes, etc. If it isn't there, then theoretically the Congress shouldn't be doing it. That's kind of how we started out. Perhaps this ruling will lead to greater growth in direct primary care practices which accept neither Medicare nor Medicaid nor even traditional insurance. That's another question. So, and then there's more. Justice Gorsuch concurred with the court and was joined by Justices Thomas and Alito in a concurring opinion from which I draw the following passages. I start with this court's precedent. There is no question that state and local authorities possess considerable power to regulate public health. They enjoy the general power of governing, including all sovereign powers envisioned by the Constitution and not specifically vested in the federal government. I don't think Justice Gorsuch listens to tall tales, but if he did, that's what he'd be hearing all the time. The federal government's powers, however, are not general but limited and divided. Not only must the federal government properly invoke a constitutionally enumerated source of authority to regulate in this area or any other, it must also act consistently with the Constitution's separation of powers. And when it comes to that obligation, this court has established at least one firm rule. We expect Congress to speak clearly if it wishes to assign an executive agency decisions of vast economic political significance. We sometimes call this the major question doctrine. OSHA's mandate fails that doctrine's test. The agency claims that the power to force 84 million Americans to receive a vaccine or undergo regular testing. By any measure, that's a claim of power to resolve a question of vast national significance. Yet Congress has nowhere clearly assigned so much power to OSHA. Let's head for Churchill Downs, and I'll come back to this after we visit Churchill Downs.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion, coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagatan and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagatan location at 479-2652 for reservations.
So here we are, Tall Tales. We got about 12 more minutes before Jose and I reach the end of the rainbow. Wait a minute, I better not use that analogy, Jose. End of the rainbow.
The rainbow?
Yeah, both Jose and I are gentlemen, straight as strings, as it were, so we don't need no rainbow here on Tall Tales. Right, Jose?
I get the gold.
Okay. So another quote from the decision in the mandate case the Supreme Court just decided, the question before us is not how to respond to the pandemic, but who holds the power to do so. The answer is clear. Under the law as it stands today, that power rests with the states and Congress, not OSHA. In saying this much, we do not impugn the intentions behind the agency's mandate. Instead, we only discharge our duty to enforce the law's demands when it comes to the question of who may govern the lives of 84 million Americans. And that's what I mean by critarchy. When you got judges, when you're being ruled by judges, you know, for those 84 million Americans, that is the most important decision that's being made by the government this year.
Otherwise known as activist judges, right?
Exactly. So, you know, for those 84 million Americans, there's no sense talking about democracy because there's nothing democratic about the Supreme Court. It's the least democratic part of our government, the most potentially tyrannical part of the government. Going back to this language here, respecting those demands may be trying in times of stress, but if this court were to abide them only in more tranquil conditions, declarations of emergency would never end. That's my point. And the liberties our Constitution's separations of powers seek to preserve would amount to little. If emergency creates power, power can create emergency. This does not solve all problems, obviously. Some private entities will persist in vaccine mandates despite their injustice, irrationality, and general uselessness. Wow. Other problems like vaccine passports are occurring at the local level and must be dealt with at the local level, though we can hope they will resolve themselves as they destroy business and tourism. This last part here is from Tom Woods. So, you know, we've got some folks on the Supreme Court who understand separation of powers, understand the doctrine of delegation, understand democracy. And, of course, the left hates it because the left would much rather convince a few justices than the legislatures in 50 states and the United States Congress. Even when they have a majority in both houses of the Congress, they can't do it. Witness Joe Manchin and Senator Sinema from Arizona. Okay, that takes us down to about 8 more minutes here, Tall Tales. I'm going to take a spin through the Facebook, and if there's any time left, I'll talk a little bit more about the separatist movement and their propaganda sheet. But before I get to that point, I've got Johnny Utah. Johnny Utah says DOJ has created a new Gestapo. On Johnny Utah, we got the Gestapo in the United States?
Yeah, it happened on Tuesday.
Tell me more, Johnny Utah, before I check your papers.
So the Department of Justice formed a unit on Tuesday countering domestic terrorism. You know, it's pretty scary stuff. From what I'm reading,
let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you here for a second. The Justice Department created a unit to deal with domestic terrorism, and you don't think it's a good idea. I think it's a great idea. All that domestic terrorism we had during 2020, where, you know, Antifa and Black Lives Matter were burning everything down and looting and all the rest of that stuff. I think that's a great idea, Johnny Utah.
Nope. Well, this group is formed from the basis of it is the letter that got sent from the Education Department about parents being domestic terrorists at school board meetings. That's where the ideology for this really is coming from. And then also January 6th, they combined those two groups of people together. So Matthew Olson, the Assistant Attorney General for the Department of National Security, said that we've been seeing a growing threat from individuals who are motivated by racial animus, as well as those who ascribe to extremist anti-government and anti-authority ideologies, number one being white supremacists and extremist groups who are against the government.
I was being facetious when I broke into your conversation there a minute ago, Johnny Utah. If there is domestic terrorism, that's what it is. What happened during the summer of 2020. But those folks
Correct.
would either be Democrats or Democrat sympathizers, so they can't be domestic terrorists.
Correct. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So, one of the things that's funny is this Jill Sanborn, who's the FBI's national security branch that's spearheading this new group that's going to be starting, and she's quoted as saying that extremists motivated by racial and ethnic hatred are the ones most likely to conduct mass casualty attacks against civilians. Well, we just saw that happen in Wisconsin. But it was a Black Lives Matter supporter, not a white supremacist.
Therefore, it doesn't count.
But the scary part about this is where they say that it sounds like anti-authority ideologies. That's the threat that they're looking into.
Well, let's sympathize with the person that had to draw up that memorandum or the order in the Justice Department. Since he couldn't use Republicans and conservatives in his draft, he had to kind of go the long way around to describe what he was trying to do, right?
Correct. But it's scary stuff because this is speech that they're talking about, not acts. Not terrorist acts. The way I'm reading this, I'm seeing that they're going to be looking down the road at trying to say that even just saying "Let's go, Brandon," makes you a terrorist.
Yep. That's why I'm going to keep saying "Let's go, Brandon" every time I get the chance, Johnny Utah.
Wait, what is that? What is that phrase again?
Let's go, Brandon.
Oh, okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, I saw this same article, Johnny Utah, and it is frightening to think of what has happened to our national government, and with the extreme power that it can wield, obviously ignoring, if you're looking for domestic terrorism, obviously ignoring a whole summer full of it, the Waukesha incident, etc., and concentrating on people because they're conservatives. It's basically what it amounts to. That's what this whole white supremacy gaggle is about. You people, you're white supremacists because you don't buy into critical race theory. Therefore, you're white supremacists.
Yeah. It's scary times, and this is a real law enforcement agency that's being created. It's just the roots of it just got laid on Tuesday.
Yeah, it is scary. Gestapo is an acronym. I used to know what it stood for. I guess I should look it up when I get home. I'll probably have to work it into the show more often. At the rate that our national government is going, the big lie about voter suppression, we've got to stomp out voter suppression, because if these things that the Republicans want to do in the state legislatures, if all of them became law, a person could only vote once. That's voter suppression.
I was just reading about Pennsylvania. There's on the grassroots level, they're trying to pass legislature getting the immigrants that are being brought in by the Biden administration and dropped off on their doorstep. They want to bust out of Pennsylvania over to Delaware, but because they've got a Democratic governor that's in bed with Biden and the national government, he's just going to veto everything that they're trying to do that's good there. But the election years are coming up, and it's going to be big, I think.
Boy, I sure hope so, because this may be our last chance. If the Democrats could hang on to the government for another 2 years, they could do extreme damage. I think when Time Magazine does its Man of the Year, if he stays with it, it ought to be Joe Manchin. He's the only guy in Washington that seems to have any courage at all.
Kahunas.
Yeah, okay, Johnny Utah, good talking to you, and I just have one more thing to tell you. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
There you go. So long.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Doubt about the voting rights bill. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Disappointing news for President Biden as Democratic Senator Kyrsten Sinema rejects changing the filibuster rule, which would allow Senate Democrats to pass the voting rights bill with a simple majority rather than requiring 60 votes.
I hope we can get this done. The honest-to-God answer is I don't know whether we can get this done.
Nemesis Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema support voting rights legislation, but won't change the filibuster in order to pass the measures.
And while I continue to support these bills, I will not support separate actions that worsen the underlying disease of division.
It's another whiff for the president, the third time Biden visited Capitol Hill since fall and failed to immediately secure Democratic support for his agenda.
Fox's Chad Pergram. The Biden administration suffers another blow, this time from the Supreme Court. The court's conservative majority ruled against the administration's vaccine mandate for large companies, but the High Court left in place a requirement for healthcare workers to get the shot.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the decision doesn't mean workplace mandates go away.
It is up to individual employers to determine whether their workplaces will be safe for employees.
President Biden is continuing to ask big companies to act on their own. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
The House Select Committee investigating the assault on the Capitol issues subpoenas to several big tech companies after receiving what the committee calls inadequate responses to prior requests for information. And Australia's immigration minister revokes Novak Djokovic's visa just 3 days before the Aussie Open begins. The tennis star's attorneys are expected to appeal today's ruling. America's listening to Fox News.